Shalom, and welcome to Hebrew Bible Secrets with your host, Rabbi Jeremy Beaton. We continue today with the book of Matthew, starting at chapter 18. Matthew, chapter 18, verse 1. The disciples came at the same time to Yahushua, saying, "Who is the greatest in the kingdom of Shamayim, of heaven?" 2. And Yahushua called a little child to him, and set him in the midst of them. 3. And said, "Verily I say to you, except you be converted, and become as little children, you shall not enter into the kingdom of Shamayim." 4. Whosoever therefore shall humble himself as this little child, the same is greatest in the kingdom of Shamayim, of heaven. 5. And whoso shall receive one such little child in my name receives me. 6. But whoso shall offend one of these little ones which believe in me, it was better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck, and that he were drowned in the depth of the sea. 7. Woe to the world because of stumbling blocks, for it is necessary that stumbling blocks come, but woe to that man by whom the stumbling blocks come. 8. But if your hand or your foot cause you to stumble, cut them off and cast them from you. It is better for you to enter into life lame or crippled, rather than having 2 hands or 2 feet to be cast into the fire of Gehenna, hell. 9. And if your eye causes you to stumble, pluck it out and cast it from you. It is better for you to enter into life with 1 eye rather than having 2 eyes to be cast into Sheol. 10. Take heed that you despise not one of these little ones, for I say to you, that in Shamayim, in heaven, their Malachim, their angels, do always behold the face of my Av, of my Father, which is in Shamayim, which is in heaven. 11. For the Son of Man is come to rescue that which was lost. 12. Do you think if a man has 100 sheep, and one of them be gone astray, does he not leave the 99 sheep on the mountains and seek that which is gone astray? 13. And if so be that he find it, verily I say to you, he rejoices more of that sheep than of the 99 sheep that which went not astray. 14. Even so, it is not the will of your Av, which is in Shamayim, heaven, that one of these little ones should perish. 15. Moreover, if your brother shall trespass against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he shall hear you, you have gained your brother. 16. But if he will not hear you, then take with you 1 or 2 more, that in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses every word may be established. 17. And if he shall neglect to hear them, tell it to the congregation. But if he neglects to hear the congregation, let him be to you as a Gentile and a tax collector. 18. Verily I say to you, whatever you shall bind on earth shall be bound in Shamayim, in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in Shamayim, heaven. 19. Again I say to you, that if 2 of you shall agree on earth concerning anything that they shall ask, it shall be done for them of my Av, which is in Shamayim, heaven. 20. For where 2 or 3 gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them. 21. Then came Peter to him and said, Rabbi, how often shall my brother sin against me, and I forgive him? Until 7 times. 22. Yahushua said to him, I say not to you until 7 times, but until 70 times 7. 23. Therefore is the kingdom of Shamayim is likened to a certain king, which would take account of his servants. 24. And when he had begun to reckon, one was brought to him, which owed him 10,000 talents. 25. But forasmuch as he had not to pay, his master commanded him to be sold, and his wife and children, and all that he had, and payment to be made. 26. The servant therefore fell down and petitioned him, saying, Master, have patience with me, and I will pay you. 27. Then the master of that servant was moved with compassion, and loosed him, and forgave him the debt. 28. But the same servant went out, and found one of his fellow servants, which owed him 100 silver coins, and he laid hands on him, and took him by the throat, saying, Pay me what you owe. 29. And his fellow servant fell down at his feet, and begged him, saying, Have patience with me, and I will pay you all. 30. And he would not, but went and cast him into prison, until he should pay the debt. 31. So when his fellow servants saw what was done, they were upset, and came and told to their master all that was done. 32. Then his master, after he had called him, said to him, O you wicked servant, I forgave you and all that debt, because you begged me. 33. Should you not also have had compassion on your fellow servant, even as I had pity on you? 34. And his master was very angry, and handed him to the tormentors, till he should pay all that was due from him. 35. So likewise shall my Av in Shamayim do also to you, if you from your complete hearts forgive not everyone his brother their trespasses. So that now ends chapter 18. So we shall go back and have a look at the footnotes for chapter 18. So the first footnote we have is in verse 7. Woe to the world because of stumbling blocks. So let's have a look at this, stumbling blocks. This is a term for breaking Torah commandments. Those who teach you to do away with or not keep Torah are stumbling block makers, and there is a great punishment for them in the world to come. So don't let anybody tell you otherwise, that the commandments are done away with. The commandments have never been done away with, and they are here to stay, even in the kingdom. Okay, so we also have in verse 7, for it is necessary that stumbling blocks come, but woe to the man, or woe to that man, by whom stumbling blocks comes. So, but woe to that man. So we have a footnote here which means Torahless teachers. So we know there are many in the world today who are not teaching the commandments. So these are Torahless teachers. Okay, so the next footnote is in verse 8. But if your hand or your foot causes you to stumble, cut them off and cast them from you. It is better for you to enter into life lame or crippled, rather than having 2 hands or 2 feet to be cast into the fire of Gehenna, hell. So let's have a look at this. Hell, Gehenna. So eyes, feet and hands are rabbinic terms. Eyes, used to study Torah. Hands, used to lead people into or out of Torah study, either as good or evil. And the feet are used to carry out the Torah action. Gehenna was known as the Valley of Slaughter. Okay, so we've all got hands and feet and eyes. So what we're saying here is use them to study Torah. Okay? So let's go to the next footnote, which is in verse 9. And if your eye causes you to stumble, pluck it out and cast it from you. It is better for you to enter into life with one eye rather than having two eyes to be cast into Sheol. Okay, let's have a look at this. So we have persistently living Torahlessness is living lawlessly and will for sure cause you to go to the bad parts of Sheol. Okay, so the bad parts of Sheol. So that's where the souls go to be tormented for 11 months. So if you look at my recording on what is Sheol and how to avoid it, you will get more understanding about Sheol. Okay, so the next footnote we have is in verse 10. Take heed that you despise not one of these little ones. Okay, so take heed that you despise. Let's have a look at this. Despise. The correct term should be curse, which is taken from Genesis 12:3, where this pertains to Israel. So if someone curses or despises you, then the haters of Israel are under a set curse. For this, see Genesis 12:3. Genesis 12:3. So this is where Hashem is talking, Yahweh is talking to Abraham. I will bless those who come to bless you, and I will curse him who despises you and sees you as worthless. And in you all the mishpachot, the families of the earth, shall be engrafted. So let's have a look at this. We have a footnote here. I will curse him who despises you and sees you as worthless. So the footnote reads, the Hebrew here is ara, which means to curse or to put a curse upon, to decrease, not black magic, simply uttering via the mouth, as Balaam, the false prophet, tried in Numbers 22:18. Okay. So the Father's saying, if anybody does try to put a curse on us, I will curse him who despises you and sees you as worthless. So the Father will, or they will be under a curse by the Father. Okay, let's go to the next footnote. Verse 10, take heed that you despise not one of these little ones. Okay, little ones. So we have, see the footnote in verse 14. Okay, so verse 14 tells us who are the little ones. Yahushua relates the story back to Exodus of Israel from Egypt, when the 12 spies were sent into the land, and 10 of them brought a bad report and caused Israel to sin against Yahweh. Then Yahweh said only the young ones or little ones who were under 20 would enter into Israel, except Yahushua, the son of Nun, and Caleb. So here the little ones is a clever way Yahushua is showing the same by a story is to Yisraeli, Israel, who are taught the ways of Yahweh and his Torah. Anyone teaching these is Yisraeli, Israel, to break Torah would be in serious trouble. Yet many over the years have been doing exactly that behind the pulpits. Okay, so like I said before, there are a lot of Torahless teachers teaching you not to keep the commandments. So, be aware, come back to the commandments, return to the commandments of the Father, and you will enter the kingdom. Okay, so let's go to the next footnote. For the Son of Man is come to rescue that which was lost. Okay, which was lost. So we have this verse 11 does not exist in many copies of the manuscripts, But we have left it in here for completeness, or else the verse number would shift. Rome has corrupted these writings, beware. Okay, so that wasn't originally in there. So let's go to the next footnote, which is in verse 13. And if so be that he find it, verily I say to you, he rejoices more of that sheep than of the 99 sheep which went not astray. Okay, let's have a look at this, not astray. This parable is similar to Luke 15:11-32. This is a different way of telling the same story, the one lost sheep, Ephraim versus the house of Judah, that was already in the land of Israel. Okay, so remember, Ephraim, 10 tribes were scattered to the northern parts, yeah? So, this is the lost sheep, Ephraim, okay? Whereas Judah, was continuing to keep the commandments and didn't go into idol worship. Okay, so let's go to the next footnote. So even so, verse 14, even so, it is not the will of your Av, which is in Shamayim, which is in heaven, that one of these little ones should perish. Okay, so the little ones again is going back to who are the little ones. And Yahushua relates the story back to Exodus of Israel from Egypt, when the 12 spies were sent into the land and 10 of them brought a bad report and caused Israel to sin against Yahweh. Then Yahweh said only the young ones, or the little ones, who were under 20 would enter into Israel, as well as Yahushua, the son of Nun, and Caleb. Okay, so let's go to the next footnote, which is in verse 15. Moreover, if your brother shall trespass against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he shall hear you, you have gained your brother. So let's have a look at this. Gained your brother. So gained him from the worldly ways to the Torah ways. Okay, so he's returned back to the commandments and is keeping the commandments, the Sabbath and the holy feasts, paying tithes, become circumcised. All of these things need to be done in order to return back to the commandments, and in order for men, obviously, circumcision, not for women, just circumcision for men. But these things need to be done in order to enter. Okay, so the next footnote is in verse 16. But if he will not hear you, then take with you 1 or 2 more, that in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses every word may be established. So the next footnote is in verse 17. And if he shall neglect to hear them, tell it to the congregation. But if he neglects to hear the congregation, let him be to you as a Gentile and a tax collector. So let's have a look at this tax collector. A Gentile and a tax collector are both terms applied to those people who were Torah breakers. So the context applies from the previous verses that if the person refuses to obey Torah, he is to be removed from the assembly. Okay. So if somebody is not keeping the commandments, then they are to be removed from the assembly. So let's go to the next footnote, which is in verse 18. Verily I say to you, whatever you shall bind on earth shall be bound in Shamayim, in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in Shamayim, in heaven. So let's have a look at this footnote here. So we have binding and loosening are rabbinic terms which stand as such. Binding means to restrict And loosening means to allow. Okay? So binding means to restrict, and loosening means to allow. Okay, let's go to the next footnote. So we have verse 19. Again, I say to you, that if two of you shall agree on earth concerning anything that they shall ask. So let's have a look at this. Agree on earth. So we have both must be Torah obedient and commandment following for this to come to pass. Okay, so both people who have been asked to do something for somebody else have to be Torah keepers. They have to be keeping the commandments in order for what they've asked for to come true or to come into reality. Okay, so let's have a look at the next footnote, which is in verse 20. For where two or three are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them. So there am I in the midst of them. Let's have a look at this. Gathered to do what? In context, gathered to set or loose on principles of the world or principles of Torah. So this is not a catchphrase as many freely use. When we enact a Torah principle, the authority of the heavens. Okay, so when you're enacting Torah principle, when you're doing something related to Torah, it's from the authority of the heavens. Okay, let's have a look at the next footnote, which is in verse 22. So Yahushua said to him, I say not to you until 7 times, but until 70 times 7. Okay, let's have a look at this. The 70 times 7 is prophetically significant and is summed as 490 years. Okay, so let's have a look at the next footnote, which is in verse 34. And his master was very angry and handed him to the tormentors till he should pay all that was due from him. So we have here, there is a hint here of people who have received the mercy of Yahweh, then go astray or start rebelling against his Torah, that Yahweh would send unclean spirits from the heaven who would torment this person, and he will lose his or her peace. Be warned and repent of your rebellion, because rebellion is the sin of witchcraft. Okay, so I think that's self-explanatory there. So the last footnote we have, verse 35. So likewise shall my Av in Shamayim do also to you, if you from your complete hearts forgive not everyone his brother their trespasses. So if you from your complete hearts, complete, let's have a look at this quickly. The word complete, shalem, in Hebrew is missing in the Greek translations. This gospel was originally written in Hebrew. See Shem Tov. Okay, so that brings us now to the end of chapter 18. And I thank you for watching and hope to see you on the other side. Thank you for watching. This is Rabbi Jeremy Beaton saying thank you for watching and Shalom Shalom.